once you get a little farther along in your recovery, you will start attracting a different person. And trust me, it will be worth the wait. Focus on your recovery for that first year. Make sure that you get through the steps. So not just wait a year and also focus on your recovery. Focus on getting through the steps. The person you attract today is not going to help you get to where you want to be. The person that you attract, once you're a little farther along, is going to be a much better fit. Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of I Love Being Sober, sponsored by 𝐾amelback Recovery, Arizona's preferred sober living option to help AA newcomers stay sober during their first year in the program. If that's you or someone you know, then you're in the right place, because my name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of 𝐾amelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people to stop their suffering and continue on their path to recovery. Let's get clear on one thing. We believe that a relapse or a slip is not a part of recovery. And that's exactly why this podcast is dedicated to you or any loved one you know in their first year of striving to live a clean and sober life. The purpose of this podcast is to come clean with all of the misinformation that's out there about recovery, addiction treatment, mental illness, and the strategies to stay sober in general. So if you believe you're in the right place, or if you know someone who is struggling with addiction, it's my privilege to share this podcast with you. Now, I have no idea if you and I have ever met, but what I do know is that AA saved my life. And I also know that to find long-term recovery and live happy, joyous, and free, it is not just about stopping your drinking, drugging, gambling, sexual indiscretions, or any other addiction you may have struggled with or suffered from. Because at 𝐾amelback Recovery, we believe that sobriety can and should be fun. And look, any recovery process is not easy. It is challenging, it can sometimes be annoying, and for the most of us, it is often difficult to stay on the path. But here's the good news. The self-awareness you gain from listening to this podcast, especially if you are in your first year of recovery, will help you make better choices, which will ultimately lead you to living a kick-ass sober life. Visit 𝐾amelbackrecovery.com to learn more about our treatment strategies for alcoholism, drug addiction, or mental illness. And we even offer recovery coaching so that you can enjoy the freedom and happiness you've always searched for. Welcome to the 81st episode of I Love Being Sober, the show devoted to people in their first year of sobriety. If you are pressed for time, listen at 1.5 times speed, and you will still get all the content from this episode. No need to take notes because I've paid a professional note taker to do that for you. The notes to this and other episodes are available when you look for them at ilovebeingsober.com. Please do that when you're done listening to this episode. You'll be glad you did, and that's my personal pledge to you for listening in its entirety. Now, although your first year in sobriety is central to our discussions, you and I will also explore other fascinating and important topics such as health and fitness, self-care, food and nutrition, breathwork, and biohacking, just to name a few. All of these things are your gateway to living a kick-ass sober life, which is our mantra at 𝐾amelback Recovery. This episode, you'll learn about the fourth mistake that leads to a relapse along with how to avoid it. So, mistake number 4. You'll discover that getting into a relationship is one of the mistakes people make that leads to a relapse, along with why it is so important to avoid this mistake if you want to avoid a slip. I will share my experience and how I avoided this mistake, and based upon what you hear in this episode, you'll be able to figure out how it works for you. So lean in and listen carefully, because this episode could have a significant impact on how you can make it to a year and much closer to living a kick-ass sober life. Also, this podcast is like an AA meeting in that everyone here is either clean and sober, trying to get clean and sober, thinking about getting clean and sober, or whatever it may be. So if you hear anything, or if anything resonates with you that I say throughout this episode, please let us know in the comments section of YouTube or Apple, iTunes, or wherever you're listening. What you share might resonate with someone else and possibly save them from a relapse or maybe even save their life. Every review and every comment gets us that much closer to helping one more person or one more family. So don't be shy and be sure to share what resonates with you in the comment section. The fourth mistake you must be aware of if you want to avoid a slip is getting into a relationship. Getting clean and sober is likely the most challenging thing you've ever done, and focusing on your recovery should be your focus. Learning how to live your new life should be the focus. A new relationship will distract you from that focus. Plus, you're going to be a completely different person in a year, and you will attract different people into your life. You'll attract a different person into your life. As you get healthier, you'll attract healthier people. And although relationships can be fun, new relationships can be fun, exciting, and fulfilling or seemingly fulfilling in the short term, you should be farther along in your recovery before you start searching for your soulmate. The recommendation is to not get into a relationship for at least a year. And at the very least, wait until you finish the steps. So your goal should be to finish the steps. This is your chance to learn how to have healthy platonic relationships. This will lead to a healthier, intimate relationship when you are ready. Now, when I first got clean and sober, I didn't date. I took this suggestion to not date. And I took that suggestion, I ran with it. I focused on recovery. I didn't date for my first year. Before I got sober, if a girl gave me a little bit of attention, I totally thought she was into me. I thought she wanted to date me. And really, she was just being nice. A lot of men, in my experience, they think that if a girl gives them a little bit of attention, now I don't know, I'm not a woman, so I'm not sure what it's like to be a woman, but as a man, if a girl gives me a little bit of attention, and I've heard the same thing from lots of my friends, a woman gives a guy a little bit of attention, she thinks he totally is into her, and he thinks that she wants to be in a romantic relationship. And my experience and what I've learned, it's not always the truth. It's not always the case. Women are just being nice. And I learned how to have healthy platonic relationships with women. I learned how to not be a sleazebag. I learned how to not hit on every single woman just because she gave me a little bit of attention. I learned how to connect. And it wasn't just about getting laid. It was about truly connecting. It was about listening. It was about being present. It was about getting vulnerable. It was about not having an agenda and being present, which made me a safe person to be around and a safe person to be with. As I was nearing a year, I remember being on my 9th step, and I was really starting to get the itch. Like I really wanted to start dating. And I remember talking with my sponsor about it, and his suggestion was to wait until I finished the steps. And I took his suggestion, and at about a year, I was completely finished with the steps, and I started dating. And I had to figure out how to date without going out and getting wasted. So this is my first time in my life where I'm dating, and there's no drinking, and there's no drugs, and there's no agenda, and I'm just learning how to connect below the surface. I'm learning how to have a good time with a woman, with a person of the opposite sex. For me, it's a person of the opposite sex anyways, which it doesn't matter if it's the opposite sex or not the opposite sex. We're just learning how to have a good time with people without having alcohol and drugs be part of the equation. And if that's something that you've never ever done before, it's a new thing. It is a new thing. And so you've got to be comfortable being clean and sober. You've got to know how to have a good time being clean and sober. And when you're starting to feel uncomfortable, a drink or drug is not what you reach for in order to make you feel comfortable. And I remember going to a wedding and dancing and getting on the dance floor. I mean, I don't know about you. Most people I know that like to drink and do drugs, it's like I didn't feel comfortable getting on the dance floor without having a couple of cocktails. And now today, and I mean, even I had to learn how to dance. I had to learn how to get on the dance floor without caring what I looked like or what other people thought. And the drink made it easier to do everything without having a care in the world. And today I can do it. And even at a year sober, I could do it as well. But you've got to get to that point. Now, the result of waiting a year and learning how to be a good guy was that I had lots of friends, lots of female friends, lots of male friends, and lots of people that had really good things to say about me. Lots of female friends that had good things to say about me. And this gave me credibility. Because I had credibility, automatically, I wasn't a sleazebag. People said good things about me. And I was able to date. I was able to date higher quality women because I wasn't a sleazebag. I didn't have the reputation of being a sleazebag. I learned how to connect without giving off the vibe that I just wanted to get laid. And at about a year and a half sober, I met a woman. I'm going to call her Sally. And Sally, this was the very first healthy relationship I'd ever been in my life. And I remember, okay, so I'm a year and a half sober. I remember I had a friend, her name was Sydney, and she said, and Sydney was, I knew her from the program, and she was one of the women that I learned how to connect with and learned how to have a platonic friendship with. She was married and she didn't have a kid at the time, but she ended up getting pregnant by her husband. But regardless, I remember her saying, I think I have a friend named Sally that lives close to you. And it turns out Sally literally lived directly across the street from me. And Sally had lived across the street from me for many, many years. So I was married to my wife. She was married to her husband. And I never saw her and she never saw me. I mean, it's so crazy how nothing happens by coincidence, in my opinion. So I get introduced or connected to Sally through Sydney. And turns out she literally lives. Her front door and my front door are perpendicular to each other. I mean, mind you, my front door is pretty far set back and her front door is pretty far set back. I think most of her property was hidden by oleanders. But we end up meeting and we were aligned in many areas. I mean, we both liked to do yoga. We were both active and healthy and fit and lived similar lifestyles in many ways. And so that was the first woman that I was totally committed to, and the first time I didn't have any shenanigans on the side. So now at a year and a half sober, I was still a little crazy, and so was she. And that was kind of like, okay, that was what I attracted, because I was still a little crazy, she was still a little crazy, but it ended up being a great relationship, and we were together for a period of time. We were together for about 2.5 years, and then the next woman I dated after Sally was a little bit healthier. And again, in this relationship, no shenanigans on the side. And then at about 5.5 years sober, I met another woman who ended up being my girlfriend for about 3 years. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm doing pretty good here. Because if you attract what you are, and I attracted this woman at 5.5 years sober, I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing really good. Now, today, as of this recording, I'm about 11.5 years clean and sober. I'm the healthiest I've ever been, and I'm in the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. I'm totally committed. Again, no shenanigans on the side. Lying, stealing, cheating is not something I'm willing to do. The guilt and the shame that would come as a result wouldn't be worth it. So my suggestion to you is stay on the path, focus on your recovery, focus on becoming a better person, focus on developing meaningful relationships with all people, men, women, platonic. And once you get a little farther along in your recovery, you will start attracting a different person. And trust me, it will be worth the wait. Focus on your recovery for that first year. Make sure that you get through the steps. So not just wait a year and also focus on your recovery. Focus on getting through the steps. The person you attract today is not going to help you get to where you want to be. The person that you attract, once you're a little farther along, is going to be a much better fit. So here's a quick review about the insights you and I both rediscovered in this 81st episode of I Love Being Sober. The fourth mistake people make that leads to a relapse is getting into a relationship too soon. We also talked about why avoiding this mistake is imperative if you want to avoid a relapse. I shared my experience with this step, or with avoiding getting into a relationship, along with the benefits of waiting. Based upon what you have heard in this episode, you can figure out how it works for you and how you can apply it in your life. And remember, these insights will only work for you if you work them. So please, make sure you apply what you've learned in this episode of I Love Being Sober, because if you do, you will be on your way to living a kick-ass sober life. And I think you'll agree that's exciting to think about. And speaking of reviews, before we end this episode, I want you to go to the review section on iTunes or leave a comment in YouTube and type in the one thing that resonated with you that you heard in this episode. Every comment counts, and what you share could resonate with someone else that is struggling and potentially save their life. You will also be asked to rate this episode. I hope I've earned 5 stars from you. So go ahead and share the one thing that resonated with you in the review section of iTunes or wherever you're listening. It will take just 3 minutes out of your day, but what you share could not only save you, but it could also save someone's life. Okay, that does it for this week. I'm Tim Westbrook, and I hope that our paths cross again next week for I Love Being Sober, the show devoted to people in their first year of sobriety. Sound good? And do whatever it takes to join me for episode number 82, because we're going to dig into mistake number 5, hanging out with friends you drank and used with. I will share my experience with this mistake along with how to avoid it. I encourage you to invite a friend, a loved one, or a sponsee to listen to I Love Being Sober. I can't wait to connect with you then. It will be an insightful episode, so I really want you to join us with your loved one.